Hi everyone, and welcome to Fix It TV. So today we have Ramesy with us from the Interbellum developer team, and we're gonna have a little chat about a few things regarding the server, the past, the present, and the future. So let me just welcome Ramesy. Welcome to the show.
We
So let's get straight on to it, and I'll start with a little bit from the past of the server. And the first question that came to mind was, why did you start the server? I mean, there already was one, I suppose. So what prompted, and why did you felt like there's a need for another one?
okay. So a couple days ago, I posted in chat the different philosophies between the people that run Return of Reckoning versus the people that are making Interbellum. Did you happen to read that?
No, I haven't seen it, but I will look into it and add it to the transcript.
It was just a random conversation in the official chat channel, but now this is based off 5 years ago because I have not spoken to anyone on the Return of Reckoning staff since 2018, 2019. But from what they said back then, and it seems to still be the case today, they want to make a game that is close to Mythic's version of Age of Reckoning as possible with only a small number of changes, right? That's at least their original idea. I don't know if it's still the case 5 years later, but that was their original idea. Ours is to take the good things from Age of Reckoning, right, and make a more modern version of it. And those two visions can't exist in the same server. Like, it's impossible. So it is one of the reasons that Azrael left Return of Reckoning and Genosaurus. Genosaurus is no longer with the Interbellum project, but he was at the beginning. Those two are the ones who started Interbellum project way before it even had the name Interbellum. So that is what prompted it, was that vision of we want to make the game into something that is more modern and can hold more people and larger populations and be more fun than just what the original form of Mythic's Age of Reckoning was. And it was a personality clash between Dennis and Azrael and the rest of the team. And that's what prompted the start of the project.
All right. So when you started the server, you said 5 years ago, correct?
Yeah, almost 5 years to the date.
Okay. So how many people did you have like back then when you started?
So when they started, it was two. It was two developers.
You started with two people. Okay.
They did. So, yeah, I got pulled in later.
So do you have an idea of like how did they grow the numbers to get more developers, more designers, more art designers and all that? Like they applied, they found friends. How did that process work?
So at first they pulled, let's see if I can remember correctly. So they pulled in Void Chris, which is a personal friend of Azrael, to start building the community manager side, the community aspect. Neres, who's no longer with the project, but she was pulled in. I don't remember where she comes from. I think she was a previous Return of Reckoning staff. Syrian, which was previous Return of Reckoning staff, was pulled in also for CM. Then they got they pulled Dansari and John, which were not 100% Return of Reckoning staff, but they were balanced forum moderators.
Right. Okay.
And then from there, Dansari and John pulled in myself and Lefsy, because of our interactions on the forums, our knowledge base of the game itself. And that was we were originally pulled in as part of Balance Team for the server. And then Janice found out that I have coding knowledge, so I got pulled into database development and C# writing for them as well. And then Lefty started developing like art skills.
Right.
So like 3D art skills. So like we got pulled in just from our knowledge and like interactions with the community. Then Lefty pulled in Kep as another member for balance, and from his guild. And then everyone after that has gone through official application processes. Everyone past that point.
It started like word of mouth and friends coming in that, some of them had some knowledge, some acquired some knowledge on the way. Okay. It's a reasonable kind of way to grow, I suppose.
Yeah, as everyone we've gotten after that point has gone through like an official application process that's been designed, but up until Kep, that it was just being pulled in from people we knew that were
okay. So
had something to offer.
So since you mentioned that, just to be, because you mentioned a lot of names there, I lost count at some point. So how many members there is today, like on the team? 10, 12?
We have 15.
15. Okay.
Yeah, we had 13.
That's a healthy number.
At the beginning of the Q&A, we had 13. We picked up 2 developers just last week.
Yeah, I've seen the announcement.
As we were, yep. So now we're up to 15. So I don't get to make the scaven comments anymore about us having the sacred number 13 of the chaos god of the horned rat.
So you got 15 members at this point. So how many divisions are there? I mean, there's developers that do coding, right? Art. We have anything else?
We have 4 departments currently.
Okay,
we've got community relations. Community relations, who's basically front and facing staff. You see me talk a lot, but I'm not actually from community relations. I just have authority to speak publicly. Then you have game design, which includes lore master, balance team, client editor, and myself. You have, and also people in game design also work in other departments sometimes. Then you've got development, which is for server backend coding, database entry, and toolset creation. And then you have art team, who is responsible for assigning animations, creating 2D art, creating 3D arts, and a couple other things. I guess I didn't split. Community relations has community managers, game moderators, and event managers, or event.
Okay.
I don't remember her actual title.
At least I can see you have a certain organization now, which is good. So do you feel
all kinds of documents about it?
Yeah, I've seen some. So do you feel like at the current stage where you are, and now that the project is getting a little bit more publicity and is moving forward and there's more people coming in asking questions, do you feel you need more people, or do you want more people to speed things up, or you feel you're okay with the amount of people you have?
We currently have open applications for game moderators, mostly for Discord, because we did get a lot more people than we originally wanted from the Q&A. So we have game moderators that are open for that. We have obviously we pulled in more developers, so people who are capable of C# coding, Python coding, C++ coding are useful, although we haven't posted a application for that, right? But we pulled into just from people who were personally messaging me after I went through all my PMs, because I don't really go through them very often. And once Lefty finishes the what did he say? I'm gonna get it wrong probably. Once he finishes the pipeline for art, art team I don't pay much attention to. Whenever he finishes the pipeline for art, like tool sets and getting a vision specifically for art, he will want more, obviously more artists, because that's probably where we need most people, because it takes a long time to create a single instance of, you know, anything that's good, right, in that department. So much so that like game design and development just fucking skyrocket past art. We're just like gone compared to them.
Yeah, I'm just asking because, you know, there's sometimes that on private servers in general, you know, some people prefer to keep, let's say, the dev with inverted commas cycle a bit tight, even if, you know, they could use the help. That's why I'm asking if you would be willing to take more people in.
Yeah. We are. That's why. So okay, we have those 4 departments, and we have documents and stuff like that. It allows us to pull people in and like segment their work if we need to.
Okay.
So we could easily pull in people and not have to worry about certain other things going out. For example, you know, we pulled in 2 developers. They're not working on the server coding, the backend server coding. They're working on tool sets. So the machines, they don't need access to the repo for the backend server coding. So even though we pulled in what is essentially a stranger to us, their skill set is used for something that doesn't, you know, can't
I get it.
negatively impact the project until we get to know them.
So
which is kind of like how everything is set up.
did you have any members that came in and you guys had to, before the applications, because I'm assuming during the applications you screen them a little bit better, but did you have a chance or it happened that you need to train somebody or, you know, screen their mentality or anything like that? Or is it too time consuming if people just right now don't have the skills, like, sorry?
So when it comes, so for example, I had some C# coding knowledge when I was pulled in, right? But I had no database knowledge. I had done mods for other games before, did no database knowledge. And so, for example, Azrael told me about his ability system, and which was originally mostly in SQL databases. So I learned that while on the project. Other people have learned things while on the project. So it's not necessarily that we won't. We will, you know, help you learn things that are necessary for the project, but you have to have some kind of base somewhere, because otherwise it takes a long time to learn coding aspects. There are certain things that I can teach people very quickly to do. It's just I don't currently need what I can teach people quickly to do.
Right.
For example,
no, I get that.
Database entry for yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's same thing in real life. You know, you have a project or a job or a business, and if you have the time, you get new people to train them. If you don't have the time because it takes too long and they don't know anything from scratch, it's too time consuming and it's not worth the amount of time. It just slows you down. So it makes sense.
Yeah, if they've got some kind of information, we can work with it. But if they've got nothing, it's like, okay, well, you need like a couple of years worth of base to learn some of this stuff.
Yeah. No, it's understandable, but you are kind of screwing up the order I had the questions in, but that's okay because I can go up and down. You
did that, not me.
I know, but it's nice because the conversation gets a life of its own, you know, and it goes forward. But since we're talking about people learning to code, and you did some people need to have a background and all that. Here is there's 2 questions that I have here. The first one is, are the devs here in the Interbellum server to make a game? Or are they here for their own leisure and learn how to code and play with the tools and things like that? Like, what's your primary goal? Learn to code or create a game?
That depends on which developer you ask. So I'm actually the current project lead, and my personal motivation is to create a game that I like playing. Because I don't know if you've looked around, but there's not a whole lot of good PvP games that exist.
Yes, I've looked around, and I was thinking to do a podcast about it as well, just to get my thoughts on paper kind of thing. But
right. Yeah. So my motivation, ever since the very beginning, has been to create a game that I personally would love playing. And there are people on the staff that is the same. And then there are other people on the staff, and we know this. Like I know this when they're brought in, that their interest is either in getting a something on their resume, or they're interested in learning. And those people still usually have an interest in Warhammer Online. That's usually what most people message me about to begin with. But like their primary motivation is more self-interested, and that's fine because they still make good code, so who cares?
Yeah, no, the reason why the question is here is because if you look and I try not to compare you with ROR, but unfortunately it has to happen. There's only two servers. There's only two servers on the thing. But mainly they said, and if you read the TOS as well, is the fact that their code, and as I think I might quote this or paraphrase it a bit, is that the players are first testers, and then they are players. So looking at the approach you guys are taking to the Interbellum server, which you want to design a game with a fresh mechanic, newer mechanics and all that, I just want to know personally, and I'm assuming some of the listeners will as well, where are they getting into? Because there is a lot of times that people go into any game, whether it's official, private server, or whatever, and they never read the TOS, and then that's how misunderstandings are happening, because they're thinking, oh, it's a game, I go in, I have rights, I have demands. But if it's stated this is for us to have fun and code and this and that, and you're a tester first, then you have really no rights, you know what I mean? So I want to know in advance kind of thing that you guys are here to make a game, and we're going to be the player base and not your testers, and then, I don't like you, testing is done, goodbye. Because in MMOs, people invest a lot, both emotionally and time-wise. So that's why I wanted to ask this question.
Everyone in game design department, which are the people that create things that players see, right? So the class mechanics, RVR, all that stuff that comes from game design. We might not necessarily code all of it. I do a fair amount, but we might not necessarily code all of it. But like everyone that is in game design, make sure I got that right. Check everyone. Yeah, every staff member that's currently in game design is here to make a game that is fun to play. It's a couple of developers and a couple of people on art team that are here for their personal growth.
Yeah.
And like I said, it doesn't affect. Yeah,
it's understandable. I mean, especially as an example, because you mentioned there's the guys that are working on the tools they can put down the resume, and they don't really impact the game anyway. So,
right, they impact other people's ability to create content in the game. Yeah.
So, so far, I know that you've done a circle of testing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, do the devs, especially the people that do the balancing, play the game? And I mean, actually play the game, not use God mode or invisible stuff, and spend, 4 hours a day playing it, or you feel those people is going to be like we heard in the past, hey, I play the game and I'm still level 1.
Okay. So I have not posted publicly the balance team document, but let me pull it up real quick so I can read it verbatim to you. But basically, my balance team is required to play the game even when it launches. It's part of their requirements. They do not. No back-end staff member is allowed to have any form of GM commands on the server. So developers, myself, anyone from game design, anyone from our team are not allowed to have GM commands on the server, which means they can never access God mode. But yeah, so let's see. One of the hiring requirements for balance team is that they must play the game. They must have the ability to push to implementation and test things that they did not agree with in the outcome of a discussion. And some generic stuff that's normal, like must be highly proficient in English. But so the only time that balance team members get something that's different than normal is this line right here, which is balance team members may at times be giving accounts separate from their personal game accounts with pre-leveled characters for the purpose of collecting play experience within an active discussion. So, for example, if a big discussion comes up related to apprentices of the White Tower, right?
Mm-hmm.
And say Kep, who likes to play Death Star a lot, doesn't have an apprentice of the White Tower leveled, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to force him to go 20 hours to level it in order to, play it to get some information so that he's useful in the conversation. Kep is primarily a tank. He's primarily a tank player. He loves tanks. So his information would be useful, but he doesn't have play experience. So he would be given an account with a swordmaster, basically, or commander.
Okay, it's clear.
And be allowed to play. But it would be separate from his actual game account, and that character would be deleted afterwards. So that's the only time. And they're still not playing with God mode. They just don't necessarily have to level something.
Yeah.
When they're
it makes sense. I mean, it's, just to get the information so they know what they're talking about. Like me, if you ask me, for example, I don't know, Blackguard, for example, I've played him to level 40 before, many years ago, but do I remember it? No. So we're going to have a conversation to have access to see all the skills and play a little bit so I know what we're talking about. So that makes sense.
That's when the server goes live. Currently, all testing is done, of course, at level, max level characters with gear. That's all testing that we've done. We don't make any one fucking level to do testing.
Yeah, it makes sense.
That concept is for when the server goes live.
Well, you should actually make someone level, though, since you mentioned it, so he can see the leveling experience, quests, and other things like that.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay,
I'm the one.
So there is someone. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this whole about experience and everything, right? So, you get the ready-made accounts and this and that. So at this stage that we are today, which is the 17th of September 2023, do you feel that the game is, with the characters you have and the new builds you have and all that, do you feel that the game is balanced?
No. So while there is a lot of math that goes into it and we can move it quickly, balance is a very catch-all term. So the reason why I said no is because the purpose right now is to get everything to function correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I'm currently waiting on Aza to finish something so I can go back to work on the actual classes themselves. But because testing has never gone past about 30 people actively at one time, and most of these people were high skill level characters, I don't have any data on non-high skill level players, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that changes things. So what you're gonna see when we pull in, when we start, phase 3 testing, as we start pulling in more people, then we have some more hard data to work with on people that aren't, top 5% skill-based players. And that will change certain things. Now, I can tell you that pretty much every class/spec is within probably 7% output, 7-8% output of each other. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're what I would consider balanced. Also, balance is a long-term active thing. Even after you launch, people are going to find things that you didn't think of.
Well, yeah, I mean, people are going to find things. They're going to find things that stack that you didn't think of, or mechanics and abilities you can, utilize that you didn't think of. And, that's the beauty of an MMO, that people explore things and do things. The question was just to see how far are you guys into this thing, you know what I mean? Because we've seen all the math, we've seen all the information about the class mechanics. You guys released on Discord. I made all these videos to help people out to get the grasp around it, because there's definitely going to be people that's going to play the game when it comes out, and they're going to have in their mind what AOR was, what RRR was, and they're going to have trouble You know what I mean? Like climatizing and adjusting to this new mechanics. So it was a good thing the information coming out a bit early. But I also got some questions on my YouTube videos where people are worried about the new mechanics, you know, because they don't have all the information. So I just wanted to touch that a little bit. And I think we did. Because there's also
I'll
another...
tell you this.
Yes.
Every single thing you see in public releases, because I don't let it go to public releases otherwise, has been tested.
Mm-hmm.
It exists. It's functional.
Okay.
If you see it in public releases, it's either currently coded or concept tested. It isn't something we've tested it before on a different version of coding that's actually less functional than what we'll have access to. So everything in class mechanics works, because I wouldn't let it go out otherwise.
Okay.
Which it's one of the reasons why you haven't seen the RVR document, right? Is because it's got some things in it that we haven't concept tested. We haven't thrown a patchwork version of it on the server and made sure it works, because we don't want to give people an expectation of something that we can't do. So anything that goes in public releases, you can tell it has been tested, at least functionally, which means that we know the code works or can work. Just depends.
Okay.
So there's that.
Okay, so
All
basically...
those class mechanics exist.
All right, so basically all we've seen so far from public release and all that is... I will use this expression, okay? Like, it's done in some level, so it's there. It's not just document production, to put it this way. Because I got that that comment somewhere saying, well, so far it's all document production, we haven't seen anything, you know? So at least the things we know, they're there. Okay. So
I posted screenshots at one point in Interbellum chat. I didn't post them in public releases, because it was just screenshots of my animation testing, for the extra weapons and stuff, to make when I was working with the lore master in order to make sure that the weapons he wanted to assign actually existed. So there is some screenshots, and then of course a lot of that stuff is art team, right? So the screenshots I did post are without art team's modifications to the client.
Okay.
Because they're...
But I do have
the director. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go on, finish your answer.
The director of art is adamant about making sure that things that get posted publicly have a high degree of quality and fidelity.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, it's his job. You know, nobody wants to give bad quality things out. It's when his name is on top of it. I do have two questions about the mechanics. Which come from the community here on Fixit TV. One of them is, do you think there is too much resource management? So far, all the mechanics we've seen, you have to manage a mechanic. Like you go into combat, I don't know, Bright Wizard, you do your dots, you do your blast, you run out, you go out. Warrior Priest, you stay, you heal, you run out, you go in the front lines, you DPS, you charge up, you go back, you do your healing. Engineer, you into combat, you have to stop to do the kits and this and that, or, you know, other classes like that. Do you think maybe you went a little bit overboard on the resource management and there is too much in and out of combat?
So there isn't a whole lot of in and out of combat. If it says that if something is listed as like in and out of combat, it usually means melee. But if I could write a class mechanics document for an Age of Reckoning Ironbreaker, for example, and it would be just as long and look just as complicated, right? Because it's in words.
So you think that it's a case where people just need to play and see how this works?
Yes. So they look at something and they see that it's overcomplicated, and that's me actually reducing the size of the document that actually exists in the back end, because it's a lot of information thrown at someone at once. Also, people are reading 24 classes instead of the one they're playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the entire reason that we have the leveling process in general, and not just immediately throw you at endgame, and the reason why it's 20 hours is that it gives you time to learn the things that are given to you. So we give you like a new thing like every 15 minutes, basically. That's about what the 20 hours equals to. But every 15 minutes so that you can learn it as you play. So, I mean, and it doesn't come out as more complicated as you think. I mean, for example, the Bright Wizard, you know, it's got the 3 mechanics, right? The explosion, the blast, and the hell is it called? It's their fucking combustion.
Combustion, blast.
Yeah. So combustion and explosion you already had before.
Yes.
Right? The only difference is now that your explosion actually scales. So rather than doing 750 true damage, which is completely easily healed through and mitigated by just having health and a healer, now it scales with your offensive and defensive stats, which means that if you go full freaking glass cannon, you'll blow yourself up in 2 or 3 explosions because you're also hitting yourself for like 2k.
Yeah, when I did the video, I said an example and said now the explosion, the damage you get over 90 points of mechanic is like you have another Bright Wizard with your stats shooting at you against your defensive ones.
Right. And it also allows a solo player, for example, if they're a solo and they don't have a healer, they can choose to have more defensive stats and take less damage from their explosion, right? So the only new mechanic added in that document is blast, which actually is just a debuff on the target. Like you don't have to keep track of it. It's just